So, picture this. You're a reporter at the White House. It seems like just another day. And then, out of nowhere, President Trump shows up for what he calls a quick session with Steve Moore from the Heritage Foundation. And get this, they brought charts. This is the story of that surprise briefing, what they said, and maybe more importantly, what happened after the charts were put away.
The whole thing kicked off with this really powerful line from Steve Moore. I mean, what a hook, right? Exclusive, brand new data that no one has ever seen before. A line like that, it's practically designed to make everyone in the room and all of us watching just lean in and pay close attention.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll walk through the 3 big economic arguments they made in their presentation, but you're going to want to stick around because the real headline might just be what happened after the economic slides were done, when the reporters' questions completely changed the subject.
So the big question is, where did this never-before-seen data actually come from? Well, Moore pointed to 2 places. First, analysis from his own team at the Heritage Foundation, and second, what he described as an advanced look at some unpublished data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Just keep those 2 sources in your back pocket because they're the bedrock for everything that's coming next.
Okay, let's get into their first big claim. And it was a doozy. It was all about jobs. They took direct aim at the official numbers, the ones that come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS.
And here's the number at the heart of it all. They claimed that over the last couple of years of the Biden administration, the BLS had gotten it wrong by 1.5 million jobs. They said the official count was that much higher than reality. And they didn't just call it a small mistake, they called it a gigantic error. And President Trump didn't waste a second jumping on that. He immediately took it a step further, suggesting it wasn't an accident. He said, and I'm quoting here, "I don't think it's an error. I think they did it purposely." And just like that, the claim shifted from being about a simple statistical error to being about intentional deception. Okay, so after dropping that bombshell about jobs, they pivoted. The next focus, household income. It became a direct comparison, a tale of 2 terms, looking at real family income growth under the Trump administration versus the Biden administration. And wow, the numbers they put up on the screen told a really dramatic story. After you account for inflation, their data showed the average family gained about $6,400 during Trump's term. And under Biden's term so far, just $551. As Moore was quick to point out, that's a more than 10-to-1 difference. And, they did address the elephant in the room. They brought up the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic hit during the Trump administration, but they framed it as a challenge they overcame, basically arguing that without that huge economic disruption, those income numbers would have been even higher. All right, for their third and final economic point, they went even deeper. They started talking about which income groups were doing better, the whole question of who benefited most. This was their direct counterargument to the common narrative about income inequality. So, take a look at this chart they presented. The argument here was that during the Trump administration, the gains were really widespread. Their data showed everyone was doing better. Lower income families were up around $4,000 and higher income families were up almost $10,000. The bottom line, they argue, was that the rising tide was lifting all boats. And this all built up to their main point of contrast. Their whole argument boiled down to this. Under Trump, they said, every income group saw gains. But under Biden, they claimed, the lowest income group had actually lost money. This was presented as a complete reversal of what the Biden administration had aimed to do on inequality. And Steve Moore really hammered this home with one final, very blunt statement based on their data. He said he made income inequality worse, not better. It was President Trump that reduced income inequality. So the charts go down, the economic talk is over, but the briefing, it was far from finished. The second that part of the presentation ended, the whole energy in the room just shifted on a dime. And just like that, it was like a switch flipped in the room. The economic briefing was done. And the second the floor was open to reporters, nobody was asking about income percentiles or job numbers anymore. The focus snapped immediately to some really urgent foreign policy crises. First question up, India. A reporter asked about a newly announced 50% tariff and whether Trump expected more trade talks. The answer was a short, sharp no.
And then he added that there wouldn't be any negotiations until the situation was, and this was his word, regal.
And then, bam, the topic shifts again, this time to the war in Ukraine. A reporter asked about a ceasefire deadline for Vladimir Putin. Trump's response was, it's going to be up to him. He also made it clear that he didn't think Putin needed to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky before he himself might meet with Putin, adding, they would like to meet with me.
And to really drive home the urgency he felt on the topic, President Trump dropped this number on the room. He claimed, without any verification, that 20,000 soldiers, both Russian and Ukrainian, are dying every single month the war continues. He called the whole thing a shame and argued that a deal had to be made right away.
So when you step back and look at this whole thing, what do you see? It was just a fascinating event. It started as this very controlled effort to reshape the economic narrative using some really powerful, exclusive-sounding numbers. But it ended with this series of rapid-fire, off-the-cuff responses to major global events. And it really leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? In our world today, when the data itself is the headline, what does that really tell us about how political arguments are actually made and won?